But before I get to all of that, I want to talk about something that is a little more real than many of the news stories that are around today, and a little more personal than what you may come to expect when it comes to the front page of the paper or, say, the 6 p.m. news. Last night, there was a huge reaction when I highlighted the comments of a gentleman who was at his wit's end on the central coast of New South Wales, who had to move out of Sydney because of the cost of rent. He's now in a scenario where if rent goes up, he is going to have to move again, and that's a good chance that he, his family and his little girl are going to be homeless.
One more rent increase and my family, my one-year-old baby, we're facing homelessness and we've got nowhere to go.
Now, I've spoken a lot about the number of people that are this close to homelessness. Sometimes I get the number wrong and say 2 million. It's actually 3 and a bit million. That is an extraordinary indictment on our federal government. But before you think, hey, Paul, I've heard you say all this before, and you start to tune out, no, come back, pay attention. Because last night on SBS, there was another example of another Australian who was doing it tough. And this was on the Insight program on SBS. Now, I really like this show because essentially they sit around, they do a forum with people, they get really interesting stories, all different perspectives. I quite like the show. But there was one bloke in particular who symbolises, just like that guy did on Q&A, millions of people who are struggling, millions of people who couldn't work any harder, but they go backwards every day.
Currently juggling 3 jobs. So I'm holding a full-time job down in the insurance sector. I'm doing Uber Eats and DoorDash food delivery in whatever free time I can get. And on top of that, I'm also making YouTube videos online as an extra source of income. When I first started 3 years ago, I was doing 70 hours a week. And I held that up across an entire year. I hit a New Year's resolution and I said, man, I am killing myself out here.
One of his YouTube videos, and I didn't know about them until that program, was him walking around his suburb talking about the difficulties of cost of living that we have focused on almost every show at the start of our show for the past 3 years.
Things are expensive. The cost of living is insane right now. If you are just working one job and you're on the median income in Australia, $67,000 per year right now, you are living just above the poverty line. 10 years ago, I was earning probably half of what I earned. I worked one job and things just seemed easier to afford. I could go out and buy things. I wasn't stressing about groceries. I wasn't stressing about paying rent.
And with the federal election just weeks away, there's a key question. Who's he going to vote for?
Who will you be voting for in the election?
The way things are going, it's whoever screws me the least. I think a lot of people have lost a lot of faith in our politicians, in our political parties at this point. So whoever screws me the least is probably going to get my vote. I'm going to be looking at policy. I'm going to be reading policy. And more importantly, I think we've lost faith a lot as Australians at this point. We have our pensioners struggling to retire. They can't retire. And if our pensioners can't retire right now, what the is going on with me when I retire? Can I retire? Am I working till the day I die? Because this is looking pretty grim in my stances.
We know people are hurting. We know people are starting to get angry, and they're sick of being told that everything is getting better when their life is only getting worse. More than 3 million people this close to homelessness, and the number of people who are homeless in this country is the record number it's ever been. But again, before you think, well, hang on, Paul, haven't you sung this song before? Yes, I have. But there are others that are noticing. Simon Benson, writing in the Australian newspaper Today, makes the following point, that Australia's living standards are the worst in the developed world. No other developed nation in the world has suffered the decline in living standards anywhere near the magnitude of Australia. No amount of boasting that the household recession has finally come to an end can alter that reality. He continues, fresh OECD data in the form of updated data set on household income shows that even after the marginally better but still slightly grim economic news, Australia's living standards continue to be the worst in the world. And there's no bounce back coming soon, at least not within this decade. The updated OECD data released in the past 2 weeks gives expression to this. The average gains in living standards by OECD countries, whereas we're talking about places like the United States, New Zealand, Canada, UK, the first world basically, is up 5% and a bit since March 2022. Australia in decline. Before this week's national accounts, the cumulative fall in living standards was a negative 8.3. So the rest of the world goes forward, Australia goes backwards. They go forward 5.5, we go backwards 8.3.